Here we go. We'll start with a question from Travis Brown from the Eagle.
Hey, Coach. Talked with your two other players about how challenging it was and if there was any surprise at how much success y'all had with the new offensive sets, the new defense, when a lot of time was spent implementing those with players watching on Zoom, like you said. I think Andre might have even said maybe you're on Zoom or some of the coaching staff was on Zoom as well. Is there any surprise that worked so well? And what was that whole scenario like trying to revamp a program digitally?
Yeah, I had to be on Zoom in quarantine earlier in the year, Travis, for 14 days. I don't think that ever became public. Not that I was trying to keep it from you guys. But in the month of February, specific to what Dre was talking about with you, there were multiple guys that had to watch on Zoom. And then depending upon where they were at in the protocols, some had to stay on Zoom. Some were able to watch from the sidelines without participating. And on the new defense, new offense, I don't necessarily know if it was the right thing to do, but just to give you some context on it, on February the 2nd is when we got our first pause from a positive test. And then we began to have consecutive positive tests throughout the rest of that week. And so the game against Vanderbilt, that first Saturday in February, and then that second Wednesday in February, we weren't able to do anything. And so that second Wednesday is when we were initially allowed to have 4 players practice. And we had 3 practices with those 4 guys. And then we were able to have 2 more practices later in that next week with 6 guys. Eventually that turned to 7. And so you remember when the snowstorm happened, initially we were scheduled to play Alabama on that Wednesday. It was postponed until Thursday, but that Tuesday afternoon is when it was canceled. So that Monday and Tuesday we were going to play. We knew we had 6 guys. You're supposed to have 7 as the minimum number, and there was a chance we would have had 7. So we had kind of started down the path of, well, if we only have 7 guys, what can we do to give ourselves a chance? And then the game against Alabama was canceled because of weather. So we practiced on that Thursday and kind of kept going on that path with only 7 guys. And then on that Friday, obviously, we went on pause again. So during that last week of February, when we were on pause, we couldn't practice. That was 1 kid on one rim, 1 kid on another rim for hours on a day, and then lifting weights over at Kyle Field. So March the 1st was when we had everybody back for practice. And so like I mentioned prior to this long diatribe, I thought that we couldn't afford to give away what that core group had learned relative to the new defense and the new offense. So we did that on Monday and Tuesday, and then obviously played on Wednesday. I don't think that there is any way to know, because you can't practice 5-on-5. I don't think there's any way to know, like, is it going to work? Is it going to work against really good teams? We didn't know. And I thought we were better on Saturday than we were on Wednesday. And I think the whole key now is going into our second week, can we be a little bit better in all of the new things than we were in what was our first week last week?
Just with the age of these kids, do you think that having to do things virtually kind of comes as second nature?
They're better at it than I am. They're more comfortable with a screen. They know how to operate it better. They're more comfortable having conversations. I don't know from a teaching standpoint, I think watching something is good. And obviously all teams watch a lot of film, but when that's the only way you can learn it and you can't physically do it, I don't know that you're able to really have a feel for exactly what you're supposed to do because you've never had to physically do it. And so, like I told you, Travis, on Saturday, the togetherness, the attitude, the effort, the communication, those things that we can control, our guys have been phenomenal, because emotionally, obviously, they've been through a lot over the last 11 months, but specifically the last 6.5 weeks. And then physically, this is unlike anything they've ever had to do. Take a week off in the middle of the season, never mind. Let's practice with 4 guys, never mind. You can be in the gym for 45 minutes with one ball on one rim. So physically, they've gained weight, they've lost weight, they've gained strength, they've lost strength. The cardiovascular has obviously been up and down. And then mentally, I mean, last week, those 2 games, 100% of what we're doing defensively is brand new, and we've never done it since we've been here. It was the first time I've ever done it an entire game in my career. And then offensively, we're doing some core things, but a lot of new aspects as well, because again, we were planning on having this group to play. And then as things transpired, that group began to change. And so we just kind of kept going down the same road.
And finally, do you let yourself look back at where things were about this time last year and how that SEC tournament turned out and kind of where we are today a year later?
It's hard not to, Travis, to be honest. It's hard not to look at my itinerary for tomorrow and realize that we're leaving to go to Nashville. And then in many respects, just because I'm weird, man, I could almost walk you through every week of the last 51 weeks, specific to what's happened personally, what's happened professionally, what's happened within our program. What a tumultuous year, much of which many of these children had no control over, and how they have been able to respond to it. I told them on Saturday in the locker room, if the average age of the players was 20 and the average age of the staff was 40, when those 20-year-old kids are 40 years old, I think they'll look back at their 20th year and realize there were more lessons to learn for life than at any other point in time in their first 20 years on earth. I mean, it's just, I think it's hard not to, while at the same time, Travis, like any other coach, how can we figure out how to win one more game? So I'm trying to stay in that lane as opposed to backtracking through what has happened in every category of our lives over the last 51 weeks.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, let's go to Chip Howard from Sports Talk.
Buzz, I asked you a little bit Saturday after the game about pace of play. The first 15 minutes, I realized Arkansas likes to play it up, but you guys were very effective doing that. Would we see more of that, or is it just is this a product of you guys hitting shots, and when you're making shots, maybe it's easier to speed things up a little bit?
Yeah, probably both. You remember the first possession of the game, Q got a layup/dunk off the jump ball. I haven't seen that in a long, long time. That was a great way to start. And then I thought we played with great confidence offensively. And I think your confidence for sure grows when you're making a higher percentage of your shots than normal. And I think if the pace is a little faster, yet you're scoring it more effectively, more efficiently than you normally are, pace doesn't become as important. That was the fastest game we had played all year long. I think it's the second highest number of points scored, but it was the fastest game. Our points per possession offensively were the best that it has been all season. And so some of the numbers that we study were good. So I don't know, Chip, that it's 100% pace of play as what led to it. I think it's a little bit of, we started good, we were in a good groove, and that groove continued to evolve in a good way. And so pace became less important, but it was for sure faster, and partly because of what we're doing defensively and offensively, it's probably going to be a little faster paced game than how we've played in the past.
Vanderbilt has 2 or 3 guys that can score the ball pretty well. What do you see when you turn on the tape and look at them?
Well, the last 4 games, they've won 2 out of their last 4. And Obviously, Pippen is one of the highest usage rate guards in the country. In the last 4 games, 2 of those games, they've played 10 kids, 10 plus minutes or more. One of those games, 9 kids. And then their game on Saturday, they played 8. So I think there's a little bit, and I'm not coaching Vanderbilt, but I think there's a little bit of let's try everybody, and whoever's doing good gets to play more. And I think they have been playing the best that they have played all season. Last week at Cincinnati, I understand Pippen scored 36, but their team was playing arguably as well as they have played all year long. So I think over the last 2 weeks, Vanderbilt, it has been their best 2 weeks of the season.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Tyler Shaw from KBTX, and then Olin Buchanan.
Coach, is there any added motivation? I mean, just the mindset of this team heading into the SEC tournament with not playing for a month. You know, they're obviously have been eager to get back on the court and just to extend this season as long as possible.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was a little bit of maybe what you saw on Wednesday. I thought it was even more visible on Saturday. And I don't know because we've never had to go through it, but, you know, kids want to play. That doesn't mean they don't want to practice, but for sure they want to play in games. And none of these guys have been through what we went through in the month of February. So I do think from an energy standpoint, they were excited to play. They were excited that we've been able to get on the other side of all of this. And I think there's a little bit of maybe it's kind of liberating internally just to be like, wow, I get to play. And it's kind of no holds barred. Let's be the best we can be, even though everything we're doing is brand new and we're not doing it all perfectly, nor should we. But yeah, I for sure think that the kids are excited to play and want to play as long as they can. And I think that's, you could easily turn that, and you look at a lot of the teams across the country that have been through what we've been through, and you don't see them coming out of the pause the same way that we have. And I think that speaks to the character of who our guys are.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to Olin Buchanan, and then we'll go Mike Lucas.
Hi, Buzz. Emmanuel seems to really have added mid-range jumper very effectively since y'all have come back. Is that something he always had, or something that y'all told him to work on during this break or whatever? What do you account for this, I guess, new shown part of his offense?
Yeah, bits and pieces, Olin, probably of all of that. It is a part of his game that he knows and has worked on. He has known that he needs to improve on it. We were able to do a lot of individual workouts during the quarantines. Not every player. He was one of the players that was able to. And then I think, it's just the next evolution in what he needs to add to his game, because now all of a sudden, if you can make a 15 to 17 footer consistently, now guys have to guard you. And now what you were known best at as far as being a straight line driver, now all of a sudden, because you can shoot, now they have to press up, and that gives you even more space. I think the thing that was best, and I think this will be the next step he has to take, Olin, he had 4 assists, because now all of a sudden, if you can shoot, guys have to press up. And now if you're very effective off the bounce downhill, you're going to force rotation. And now when you force rotation, can you get fouled? Can you make a play for someone else? Those 4 assists were huge for us on Saturday at Arkansas. And I think that's what I talked to him about on the bus when we were going back to the plane is, man, it's a delicate line. Do I need to shoot this shot? Or is this the time for me to turn it downhill and drive it? Or is this the time for me to turn it downhill and drive it to draw a foul? Or turn it downhill and create an uncontested shot for someone else? And I think kind of all of those things are interconnected, but being able to make a 15 to 17 footer with the consistency he has the last 2 games, some of those doors begin to open a little wider.
So he's becoming that that Buzz Williams player, the non-positional guy versatile guy you're always looking for?
Well, I just think I don't know. I don't know if it has anything to do with me. I just think it's kind of how the game has evolved. Like you watched the All-Star game yesterday, and my sons were able to watch it, so they were hollering at me as I was watching tape. But like, there's not a lot of true position guys anymore. The teams that seem to win the most, and the teams that seem to have the highest number of players that can pass, dribble, and shoot, and guard multiple positions, those are the ones that seem to have the most success. And I think we have kind of been on that relative to how we want to operate I think we were early to the party, so to say. Hey, who do you want? I want guys that are hard to guard, and I want guys that guard hard. That's what I want. And so that kind of takes the position out of it. And I do think you need to have a really good quarterback. And I do think you need to have really good players down the middle, like any other baseball analogy or football analogy, whatever you want to say. But the versatility, we've always called them switchables. I think being able to pass, dribble, and shoot makes you a switchable. And the more size and strength and quickness and athleticism that you have, that means you're able to guard multiple positions. And so we need to have more of those on our roster. And over time, that's what we've got to evolve to. But for sure, E-Man kind of fits that mold of guys we've had in the past, that even those guys that are still playing professionally now, you're like, what position is he? He doesn't have a position. He just does a little bit of everything.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right, let's go to Mike Lucas from CAGS and then Brent Zortman.
Hey, Coach, we see it every March. We get to the conference tournaments, the NCAA tournament, and there's upsets galore and teams that you would never expect to beat certain teams do. So I'm curious, what makes those possible in March? Why do we see so many, crazy outcomes that we typically wouldn't see during the regular season or, in January or December?
I think there's always something, Mike, that happens when everybody in the arena knows if we lose, we go home. And everybody handles that differently, whether that's a senior, whether that's a freshman that's playing in the conference tournament for the first time. Like, we've got multiple kids on our team. They've never even played in a conference tournament. So I'm praying in the right way that we're able to play on Wednesday, because this will be a first for many of the kids that are in our program. But, I think that's why it's called March Madness. And you see some of the strangest endings. You see some of the biggest roller coasters up and down of how are they so far ahead, and now look what's transpired. I just think that's what makes it so fun.
So with that in mind, what's it going to take to win 5 games in Nashville this week?
Mike, typical coach cliche on this answer. We need to figure out how to have a really good practice, because we haven't had very many practices over the last 6 weeks, and everything we're doing is brand new. And so the reps we'll get today, I hope, make us a little better than when we finished on Saturday. We'll have to work early in the morning because our shoot around time in the last place game is early on Wednesday. So that means it's early shoot around at Bridgestone on Tuesday. But we'll have to not turn the ball over. Well, we'll have to make sure that on the glass we're creating extra possessions for us and preventing extra possessions for the opponent. Somehow we've got to figure out how to get fouled and how not to get fouled. We shot the 20 more balls than Mississippi State did on Wednesday. We only had 5 turnovers, and we had twice as many offensive rebounds. And then on Saturday, we shot the same number of balls against a completely different type of team. We beat them on the offensive glass by 1, but they ended up shooting twice as many free throws. And then we turned the ball over 17 times, which gave them 24 points in transition. We can't absorb those types of numbers. That it was a 1-possession game multiple times in the last minute says a lot about our kids. But to give the opponent the ball 17 times and 24 points came from that, And then for us to only shoot 10 free throws and they shoot 20, those numbers in March become hard to overcome.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, we'll wrap it up with Brett Zortman from the Houston Rockets.
Buzz, you're taking them one practice at a time at this point, right? The hey,
I forgot. I took for granted, Brent, that maybe that's the way I should have always done it.
No, I think a lot of people are doing that at this point. Hey, I've described Gary Blair as this generation's combination of Abe Lemons and Shelby Metcalf rolled into one. And I know
I would agree.
I know you're just getting things rolling. Probably some people are going to have to look up who those guys are, but I know you're just getting this thing rolling. But is it inspiring what he's done and the blueprint he's kind of set in place? Because, you know, the program he took over was similar to the one that you and Billy took over way back when as well. And look what he's done.
Hey, Brent, maybe you're writing a story about Coach and add as many superlatives and quote me on as much as you want. But make sure you say this. So, you know, I was a manager for Coach Orr at Navarro. And during that span of time, every college coach that I met, you know, I would write them a letter on legal sheet of paper every week the rest of my college career. The last 2 years, I was a manager at Oklahoma City University. The head coach that hired me had just been promoted from an assistant. They had won the national championship, and Daryl Johnson became the head coach at Baylor, and his assistant, Wynn Case, became the head coach. He was the youngest minority head coach in the country when he was hired. He's now the top assistant for Kermit at Ole Miss and has been with Kermit for 11 years. So I lived in the dorm and I worked intramurals and I got paid $100 a month. And I lived on the same side of the dorm as our players to help wake them up to make sure that they were going to class. So Frederickson Fieldhouse is where the gym was. And the first day of school, I walk into the gym and I asked Coach Case, hey, Coach, anything I need to do? He said, the first thing you need to do is go down there to your office. And I go, hey, Coach, I got my own office? He said, no, not really, but it's where you're going to office. And I go, okay, well, where's it at? He goes, well, it's not hard to find. Just walk all the way down this hall, and right before you get to the laundry room, it's right there on the right. So I'm walking down this little bitty hall, and I see this small office, if that's what you want to call it. And I turn and open the door, and Coach Lemons is sitting in there, and the desk took up about 82% of the office. I said, hey, Coach, my name's Buzz. And he said, what the hell are you doing in here? And I said, well, Coach Case said this was where I needed to office. He said, Coach Case doesn't know what he's talking about. This is my office. And I said, well, Coach, is there anything I can do for you? He said, I want to know who are you and how'd you get here? So my 2 years at Oklahoma City, I officed with Coach Lemons. And he was the only speaker on the Nike coaches circuit at that time who was retired. That's how well thought of he was. And that's how much everybody still wanted to hear him speak. I knew Coach Blair, obviously, when I was an assistant here, and I know many of his longtime assistants that have went on to become head coaches. And even since I've been back in the 22 months that I've been back, like my respect for who Coach is, I don't think there'll be another one. I don't think that anyone in my generation will ever eclipse the achievements that he has, no matter where he's been. And I think he's a treasure, not only on the floor, but I think he's a treasure off the floor. And I agree. I mean, I picked up Coach Lemons every day from his house and carried him to work. And after practice, carried him home. Every time he had to go to the airport to go speak, I took him. I mean, I was driving his car, and his wife gave me the keys to the car because she didn't want him driving. So I completely know Coach Lemons, and obviously I've known Coach Blair for multiple decades, and I just think the world of him.
I needed. Thank you, Buzz.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I got to go watch film, guys.
That's all the questions we have. Thank you, Coach.
All right.